Many people shop around for the best price when it comes to their vehicle needing a routine service, but consumer reporter John Matarese talks about the risks in his Don't Waste Your Money report.
Somewhere in America's best-selling truck, a single part is already ticking toward failure. The GM L87 V8, trusted by millions, has triggered 597,000 recalls, and owners never saw it coming. Toyota's brand-new twin-turbo 6 is grinding itself apart on metal shavings left inside at the factory. Nissan's revolutionary VC Turbo has forced over 760,000 recalls, with reports of engines catching fire. 7 engines, 7 automakers. One unsettling truth: none of them failed because of how they were driven. Every single one left the factory already broken. Which one is sitting in your driveway right now? Stay with us. Let's dive into the evidence and uncover the truth. The Nissan VC Turbo. Where you'll find it: Nissan Rogue, Altima, and Infiniti QX50 and QX55. In both 1.5-liter 3-cylinder and 2.0-liter 4-cylinder forms.
Hood on the Infiniti QX50. We have a 2-liter VC turbo engine. It's quite a gem. It's very, very smooth. We'll find out when we drive.
You're merging onto the highway, and the engine just locks up underneath you. No warning light, no slow decline, just gone. That is exactly what's been happening inside Nissan's most advanced engine. Nissan sold this as cutting-edge engineering, an engine that can change its own compression ratio on the fly to balance power and fuel economy. The cutting edge turned out to be the weak point: the bearings and links that make this system work, specifically what Nissan calls the main A-, C, and L link bearings, were defective from the factory. As they wear, they shed metal into the oil, which circulates and scores everything it touches. Eventually, the bearing seizes completely. If that happens at highway speed, you lose power in traffic with no warning. Regulators didn't stumble onto this by accident. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened a preliminary investigation all the way back in December 2023, after owners reported engine knock and metal shavings turning up in their oil pans. For over a year, Nissan told federal investigators the problem wasn't a real safety risk, pointing to noise and vibration as early warning signs before any total failure. That answer didn't hold up. By 2025, Nissan's own engineers confirmed the real cause: manufacturing defects in the bearings themselves, made worse by high oil temperatures that break down lubrication faster than the engine was designed to handle. The numbers here are enormous, and they kept climbing. It started in June 2025, when Nissan recalled about 444,000 Rogue, Altima, and Infiniti vehicles. Investigators kept digging, and in February 2026, 2 more recalls landed on the same day, adding another 642,000 Rogues split across a bearing seizure campaign, and a separate defect, where the electronic throttle body's internal gears can fracture and stick the throttle closed. In total, more than 760,000 Nissan and Infiniti vehicles have now been called back over problems tied to this one engine family. Nissan says only about 0.6% of the recalled vehicles actually need a full engine swap. But on a recall this size, that small percentage still adds up to roughly 2,000 replaced engines. The company's response tells its own story. Nissan has now extended the VC Turbo engine warranty twice, most recently to 10 years or 120,000 miles for 2023 through 2025 Rogues, a coverage window far beyond any standard powertrain warranty. That kind of extension isn't a courtesy. It's an admission that the automaker doesn't expect this problem to disappear on its own. If debris is confirmed in the oil pan, Nissan replaces the entire engine free of charge, a job the company itself says takes up to 15 hours. Outside of warranty, replacing the engine in a Rogue runs around $8,000 once labor is included, on a vehicle that might only be worth $20,000 on a used lot. The bitter irony is that this engine was Nissan's flagship innovation, marketed as proof the company could out-engineer its competitors. Instead, 3 separate recalls in under 2 years turned it into one of the largest engine failures in the brand's history. The Ford 2.3L EcoBoost. Here's what makes this one different from almost everything else on this list. It isn't happening to old cars. It's happening right now, to vehicles rolling off the line in 2025 and 2026. Ford has confirmed that during assembly, a small component called the camshaft roller finger follower was installed incorrectly on a batch of these engines at the company's Cleveland engine plant in Brook Park, Ohio, the only U.S. facility that builds this engine. If the follower becomes dislodged from the valve stem, the engine can tick, leak, lose power suddenly, or fail to start altogether. Ford's own engineers found the first dislodged follower during a routine teardown in March 2026. Within days, a separate warranty claim on a Ranger with strange cylinder head noise traced back to the exact same part. A separate batch of engines had a different assembly error entirely. A missing piston pin circlip, the tiny snap ring that holds the piston pin in place inside the cylinder. Without it, the pin can walk sideways and gouge the cylinder wall from the inside. In June 2026, Ford recalled 1,536 Bronco, Explorer, and Ranger vehicles, specifically over the camshaft defect, covering vehicles built between February 2024 and May 2026. On top of an earlier recall for the missing circlips affecting Mustang and Explorer models. Through May 2026, Ford had logged only a dozen reports tied to the camshaft issue, 3 field reports, and 9 warranty claims, which is a small number on paper. But the company still isn't taking chances, because the failure mode is severe enough to cause a sudden loss of drive power at any speed. Owners are being told to watch for ticking or tapping noises, a low-volume engine leak while running, and a check engine light. The fix is not a sensor or a gasket. Ford's remedy is to replace the entire engine long block, and as of this recording, that fix is not even available yet. Notification letters are going out by mid-June 2026, but the actual repair parts and final remedy letters aren't expected until the window between late November and early December 2026, meaning some owners will spend nearly half a year driving brand new trucks with a confirmed engine defect and no repair on the table. This engine has also drawn a class action lawsuit covering a wider window of model years, alleging Ford knew about internal leakage and oil dilution problems in the 2.3-liter EcoBoost long before it went public. Some plaintiffs in that case never even experienced a failure themselves. They're arguing they simply overpaid for a defective engine, whether it fails on their specific vehicle or not. To put this in perspective, Ford led the entire industry in total recalls last year, with close to 13 million vehicles recalled in 2025 alone. And by mid-2026, it was already closing in on 10 million more. This 2.3-liter EcoBoost problem is just one entry in a much larger pattern of assembly line mistakes across the company's lineup. This isn't old machinery wearing down. This is a new engine assembled wrong, sitting in dealership lots today, waiting for a fix that doesn't exist yet. The Toyota 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6, V35A, This one stings because of what it replaced. Toyota pulled the old 5.7-liter V8.
It was 5.7-liter V8, and we're going to talk a little bit about horsepower and torque and how Toyota manages that through this engine.
An engine famous for running past 300,000 miles without complaint, and dropped in this brand new turbocharged 6, built to squeeze more torque and better emissions out of a smaller package. During manufacturing, tiny metal shavings, what machinists call swarf, were left inside some of these engines. That debris works its way to the #1 main bearing, the bearing that carries the heaviest load in the entire engine, especially under towing. Once that bearing fails, the engine knocks, runs rough, or shuts off completely while driving, sometimes in under 40,000 miles. Toyota has recalled this engine 3 separate times, and the story keeps growing. The first recall in May 2024 covered about 102,000 trucks and SUVs. A second recall in November 2025 added roughly 127,000 more. A third landed in May 2026, adding another 44,000 vehicles, specifically 2024 Tundras built at Toyota's Alabama plant. In total, close to 270,000 vehicles are now caught up in this single-engine problem. Toyota's own investigation found that towing loads combined with timing chain tension put extra pressure on that one bearing, which lets even a tiny piece of leftover manufacturing debris disrupt the oil film and let the crankshaft seize. Through 2025, Toyota had logged more than 2,600 warranty claims and 300 field reports of these engines failing, and the company has already replaced more than 70,000 engines under the earlier recalls. Here's the part that should bother you. Instead of replacing every affected engine, Toyota rolled out a resonant frequency inspection test in June 2026 to decide which engines are sick enough to swap. A technician doesn't tear the engine down and look. Dealers plug in software that measures vibration at the front of the crankshaft and reviews the truck's drive data. And if the software can't confirm the bearing is clean, only then does the engine get replaced. Many owners are furious about it, because a piece of software deciding whether your engine gets replaced feels very different from a mechanic actually opening it up and checking by hand. Out-of-warranty owners who've been quoted for a replacement report bills as high as $20,000 to $25,000 once labor and hybrid-specific components are factored in. And Toyota is still building new Tundras with a version of this same engine. The company has changed the design of that #1 bearing and claims debris is less likely to cause damage now. But it stops short of admitting there was ever a design flaw in the first place, calling it strictly a manufacturing and machining issue. What stings the most here is the timing. Toyota built its entire reputation on the old 5.7-liter V8, running forever without complaint. Replacing that legendary engine with one that's already on its 3rd recall in 2 years feels like a step backward, not forward. This is not an old design wearing out. This is a brand new engine, failing on metal debris that should never have been inside it in the first place. The Volkswagen/Audi 2.0-liter turbo, EA888.
On one side, you've got the EA888, the engine that basically defines modern Volkswagen performance.
This engine is everywhere, under a dozen different badges, sold by the millions. And to be fair, when it's built right, it can last past 200,000 miles. But this engine has 2 slow leaks that never fully go away. The first is oil. A new class action filed in February 2026 alleges the piston rings on this engine are defective and cause carbon buildup that jams the PCV valve, the small part that regulates crankcase pressure. Once that valve sticks, pressure builds up inside the engine, expanding and cracking the plastic oil pan cover underneath. One plaintiff, a Tiguan owner, said her check engine light came on, the car started running rough, and it eventually refused to accelerate past 40 miles per hour. Mechanics found a cracked oil pan, a broken PCV valve, and worn piston rings all at once. This is actually the second oil consumption lawsuit VW and Audi have faced over this engine. A separate case was already settled last year, which raises an uncomfortable question about whether the earlier fix ever actually worked. The second leak is coolant. For years, Volkswagen used a plastic water pump next to one of the hottest parts of the engine. Plastic breaks down under constant heat, and when it cracks, coolant drips out, and the engine starts running hot. There is a long-running settlement covering water pump failures on 2014 to 2021 models, and that same MK7-era water pump settlement only recently finished paying out claims. On top of that, Audi recalled roughly 343,000 vehicles in the US because the coolant pump on this exact engine could short out and start a fire. Volkswagen separately recalled a batch of Atlas SUVs over oil that could leak onto hot engine parts. It's worth noting, this isn't even the only engine-related legal trouble VW Group is dealing with right now. A related V6 engine from the same automotive family.
A V6 is basically two inline three-cylinder engines sharing a crankshaft and placed at an angle from each other, usually 60 or 90 degrees.
Sold in higher-end Audi models, is facing its own fresh water pump lawsuit this year, with owners reporting failures at under 50,000 miles and repair quotes north of $5,500. It paints a picture of a company that keeps running into the same category of problem across multiple engine families. A single water pump failure isn't catastrophic. Call it $600 to $1,200 at a shop. But one ignored coolant leak, combined with the ongoing oil burn, can cook the engine and turn that bill into a full replacement. Plaintiffs in the newest lawsuit also argue that Volkswagen and Audi have never released a real fix. No upgraded piston rings, no redesigned PCV system, which means owners are stuck living with the same defect model year after model year. What makes this engine tricky is that it doesn't announce itself the way some of the others do. There's no single moment of catastrophic failure that forces a recall. Instead, it's a slow drain on the wallet, a water pump here, a quart of oil there, that adds up over years of ownership. Owners who don't stay ahead of it are the ones who eventually get hit with the big bill. The Honda 1.5-liter turbo. Honda built this small turbo engine to be powerful, efficient, and reliable. It hit 2 out of 3. On short, cold trips, unburned gasoline slips past the piston rings and drips into the oil pan. That gasoline thins the oil, and thin oil cannot protect metal parts the way it should. Bearings and rings wear out faster than they were designed to. That alone would be bad enough. But a growing number of these engines are also losing their head gasket, the seal between the engine block and the cylinder head. When that gasket fails, coolant leaks directly into the engine and mixes with the oil. The result is a misfiring, overheating engine that can die completely. There is an active class action lawsuit in the United States covering the Civic, CR-V, and Accord, accusing Honda of knowing about this oil dilution problem and not warning customers. Canada has its own class actions in Quebec and British Columbia over the same head gasket failures.
A head gasket is a vital component in your vehicle's engine, acting as a seal between the engine block and the cylinder head.
One owner's Civic failed at just over 111,000 kilometers. Honda refused to help. Her repair bill came to more than $5,400. In the US, the same repair runs close to $3,000, before mechanics even find what the thinned oil damaged elsewhere in the engine. The frustrating part is how ordinary this engine looks on paper. It doesn't grenade in a dramatic fashion. It doesn't throw a rod through the block or catch fire on the highway. It just slowly wears itself out, one short, cold weather trip at a time, until the day it doesn't start. Because there's no single dramatic failure moment, Honda has never issued a formal recall for it, which means owners are footing the entire bill themselves. This is not an engine that got unlucky. This is a known flaw that Honda never recalled, and it's quietly sitting in millions of driveways right now. The Hyundai/Kia Theta Li 2.0 liter and 2.4 liter. This is one of the longest-running engine failures in modern car history, and the defect is simple to explain. During machining, metal debris was left inside the crankshaft's oil passages. Over time, that debris blocks oil from reaching the connecting rod bearings. Starved of lubrication, the bearings overheat, wear down, and start knocking. Keep driving, and a connecting rod can punch straight through the engine block. Hot oil sprays onto the hot engine, and that is how several of these cars caught fire. This started with a recall of 470,000 Sonatas back in 2015, and never really stopped. Hyundai and Kia eventually settled the related lawsuits for $1.3 billion, and were forced to extend the engine warranty to 15 years, or 150,000 miles, specifically for bearing failure. More than 4 million vehicles were swept into these settlements. If your car is still inside that warranty window, replacement is covered. If it isn't, you're paying $6,000 to $8,000 out of pocket. And if you're shopping for a cheap used Sonata or Sportage with this engine, understand what you're actually buying: someone else's unresolved defect. This is also the entry on this list that proves how long these problems can drag on. The first recall happened back in 2015. More than a decade later, owners are still filing claims, dealers are still replacing engines, and the settlement fund is still being drawn down. A defect this size doesn't disappear just because the news coverage moves on. The General Motors 6.2-liter V8 L87.
Naturally aspirated, direct injected, 6.2-liter aluminum V8 engine. The GM 6.2 liters Ecotec 3, also known as L86 and L87, powers pickup trucks and SUVs such as the Chevrolet Silverado.
According to General Motors' own words, this problem traces back to a supplier that shipped crankshafts that were out of spec, along with contaminated rod bearings. GM used them anyway. As those parts wear, the connecting rod bearing can seize, and the rod can punch straight through the side of the engine block, often without a single warning sign beforehand. In 2025, GM recalled roughly 597,000 of these trucks and SUVs in the US, and more than 700,000 worldwide. GM's own estimates suggest around 18,000 engines will need a full replacement. But here's what makes this different from every other engine on this list. It is still happening. A 2026 GMC Yukon owner reported total engine failure at just 1,500 miles on a truck that already went through GM's recall process. Federal safety regulators have received over 1,100 complaints about bearing failures, and in early 2026 they opened a fresh investigation into whether GM's fix even works. GM's first remedy for many trucks wasn't a new engine at all. It was switching to a thicker oil, first 0W40, then a specific Mobil 1 formula, hoping heavier oil would protect the worn bearings. Owners and their attorneys say that doesn't fix a bearing that's already contaminated, or a crankshaft that's already out of spec. In February 2026, Multiple lawsuits were consolidated into a single class action in federal court, with plaintiffs calling GM's recall remedy egregiously inadequate. Regulators are now also looking at 2019 and 2020 trucks that were never part of the original recall at all. On a recalled truck, replacement is covered, and the job takes 18 hours or more. Outside of warranty, a new 6.2-liter V8 can cost $12,000 to $15,000 once you add parts and labor. GM has also confirmed that not every replacement engine going into these trucks is factory new. Some owners are receiving remanufactured units instead, rebuilt to meet the same specifications, but not freshly produced. For a customer who already went through one engine failure, being handed a rebuilt unit instead of a new one is a hard pill to swallow. This is not a defect from a niche model. This is the engine sitting inside the truck millions of Americans drive to work every single day. And as of this year, nobody, including the government, is fully confident the fix works. So here is what to actually do with all of this. Pull your dipstick, wipe it clean, and pull it again. If the oil smells like gasoline, or if it glitters with tiny flecks of metal when you tilt it toward the light, that is not normal, and on every engine covered in this video, that was the first warning sign before the failure that put it on this list. Every one of these 7 engines shares the same root cause.
One of these engines just a few weeks ago, but I feel like I shorted you guys with that video because that engine was not recalled.
None of them failed because of how they were driven. They were built with a flaw already inside them, before the first owner ever started the car. That is not a maintenance problem you can prevent with oil changes. That is a manufacturing problem, and right now, the customer is the one paying for it. So before you sign for any vehicle, new or used, look up the engine code, check it against the open recalls, and if you can, check the oil yourself. It takes 2 minutes, and it could save you thousands of dollars. Or worse, 7 engines, 7 different automakers. One thread running through every single one of them. A factory defect that no amount of careful driving could have prevented. The recalls will keep coming. The lawsuits will keep getting filed. And the only real defense any owner has is knowing exactly what's sitting under their hood before something goes wrong.